Good morning. This is Bruce Montgomery with Green Engine. I'm the co-founder of Green Engine. We are a craft grow applicant in Chicago, Illinois, and we're very excited about our opportunity to participate in this most exciting industry that's taking place in Illinois and around the country. Cannabis is certainly, by some reports, the fastest growing industry on the planet. So we are hopeful to get a foothold into this game in Illinois. We have applied for a craft grow license. So again, my name is Bruce Montgomery with Green Engine Grow right here in Chicago. And my guest today on the Green Engine Network Report. This is one of the first or second of these that we've done. And so we're excited to have Larry Mishkin, one of the accomplished attorneys in this field of cannabis. He is part of a large organization. Larry, why don't you tell us about the Hoban Law Group and how did you guys create this big footprint in cannabis across the country?
Absolutely, Bruce. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure to get to work with you and Wendy and the rest of your team. And I'm very excited about this opportunity. I've watched you guys from the beginning and think you're a great group. And I'm very excited to hopefully see you guys one day cultivating the cannabis that I'm smoking in this state. Nothing would make me happier. I've been an attorney in Illinois, an Illinois licensed attorney for over 30 years. I've discovered.
Wow.
Now I just say over 30 years. I don't have to get any more specific than that. My whole life was spent as a litigator. So I was a courtroom attorney, doing all different types of courtroom work, most recently representing businesses. So it was primarily commercial litigation, contracts, things like that. And unfortunately, a large percentage of my client base got severely damaged by the economic downturn that began in 2008. And really kind of ran for a few years there. And they were small enough that it really kind of wiped out a lot of them. And some of the ones who were in real estate and some of the ones who were franchisees, where they had their names signed on things. It wasn't just their businesses went under, they went under.
Wow.
And it was a constant struggle to try and figure out what would come next. And in 2013, the Illinois State Legislature, threw out what looked like a lifeline to a lot of people. And that was their decision to allow medical cannabis in the state of Illinois. Which was very, very exciting. It also broke ground because Illinois became the first state to adopt a marijuana program by legislative action as opposed to popular referendum. And we were on our way. And within days of the announcement that this law had been passed, my phone was lighting up with former clients who said, "Hey, this is how we're going to get back in the game.
Okay.
What do you know about this stuff?"
All right.
My response was, well, other than what I learned in college, probably not a whole lot more. Certainly nothing from a business perspective. And at that point, I had my doubts, as much as I would like to believe that there could be, really a legitimate marijuana market out there. I found it hard to accept that proposition. So in November of 2013, I flew out to Seattle for what at the time was the second ever MJ Business Daily conference. Now, of course, that is now the standard conference. That's it. That's the industry show every year in Las Vegas. Last year, I believe they had over 40,000 people. In 2013, there was 700 of us.
Wow.
And we were all in one room and we sat there and we listened to presentations. And when the presentations were over, they said, now, if you want to go downstairs, you can check out the displays. And there was maybe 10, 15
on card tables.
But I will tell you that from the minute I walked in the door, my opinion of everything changed because I could see that everyone there were business people. Some people wearing coats and ties. Yes, there were a handful of, deadhead looking, we've been doing this all of our lives type stoners. But mostly this was business people. And they were dressed like they were at a business conference and it was run like a business conference. And as they started going through the background of the business and what it was doing up to that point and what its numbers were and where it could go and the problem, this is a real business. This is legitimate. This is not just, a bunch of, old high school buddies looking for an excuse to get high every day. They're really serious about this and they're doing it in a legitimate way. The message from day one, from the very first speaker at that conference was, this is not a fraternity party. And if you advertise it as a fraternity party, you're going to go nowhere in this industry.
Well, it really reminds me, I've spent as you described, I spent 30 plus years in the computer and the technology field. And I kind of did the same thing. I'm a lifelong Chicago resident, grown up on the west and the south sides of Chicago. I spent all of my life here going to school and living. And when I entered in the computer industry, I said, well, let me get on a plane and go to San Francisco. And so I went to one of the first ever Mac World conferences at the old, what they used to call the Cow Palace in,
Sure.
in San Francisco.
Know it well.
And when I saw all of those people at all of those booths and people, and I said, wait a minute, this is a real industry. A whole industry is springing up around these new devices called Macs and PCs and peripherals and all this kind of stuff. And again, sometimes you have to travel to see that, hey, what you're seeing in Chicago, Illinois is just the tip of the iceberg. And obviously we've seen that as, California's been, doing this, Oregon has been doing this, Colorado's been doing this. So then here comes Illinois saying they want to be in the game. So you've been at this for 2013. So then when Illinois comes to the table, you actually, said, hey, I'm going to get on this train and I'm going to really focus on this. And so how have you gone from there, and how did you get connected with Hoban?
Sure. So I came back from this conference with a brand new appreciation of this industry, and with a real embedded belief that it not only could succeed, but that it was actually viable for my clients. One of the things I was worried about is, are they just getting sucked in because it's marijuana, but it's going to be a money drain? Will it really be legitimate? Are they all going to get arrested? And quickly found that no, this is legit. So I worked with a number of groups who were applying for medical licenses, and eventually found myself being asked to do presentations, and started traveling to conferences. I had a client who actually went with me to the Seattle conference, and just to show the difference between a lawyer and a business person, the lawyer, came out of there saying, boy, I really know a lot about marijuana law. This was great. He, the business person, came out of there saying, wow, you can really make a lot of money if you run one of these conferences. So he and his partner formed what at the time was the International Cannabis Association, and has now become the Cannabis World Congress, which is probably, after MJBiz, maybe the second or third largest cannabis conference group around. This is how legitimate everybody really thought it was, that everybody's going to want to get a part of this. And so we were very excited and happy to do so, but we quickly realized the difference between Illinois and other states. And the primary difference, you were just mentioning those other states, Bruce, as I said before, Illinois came into this by way of legislative action. Mm-hmm. And as a result, there was no industry that existed before, certainly no legal industry in it. Right. And while there was a black market industry, it was definitely black market. There was no real gray market in Illinois at the time. And so what Illinois did from day one was they kind of took it by the neck, and they said, we're going to allow it, but we're going to allow it on our terms, limited numbers at a time, so we can control the growth and all of that. In Colorado, they got started back in 1999 by way of referendum. They amended the Colorado Constitution to make it legal for Colorado residents to home grow marijuana and to smoke the marijuana that they grew. And the idea was that this would then become the foundation for a medical marijuana program. And the Colorado legislature was charged with the task of preparing enabling legislation to allow all of this to come to the table. And they never got around to it.
So it's really kind of the Wild West, and people took their shots. And
everybody,
so Illinois has been in a position of being able to learn from the mistakes of others, learn from those mistakes. And so the legislators that pushed forth first the medical law, but then later at the beginning of this year, the rec law that provided for broadening of the industry. And then the other thing that they contributed to was this notion of social equity. One thing, when we look around the country, one of the sad facts of this rapidly growing industry is that many people feel it's been over the backs of those that have suffered under the criminalization and over policing and the sentence imbalancing and all of these kinds of things that have weighed heavy on the backs of African-American, Black communities across the country. And so Illinois seemed, because there were some legislators that were sensitive of this in their community, that they wanted to have some part of that legislation that spoke to, we've got to right some of the past wrongs of these things and give those that have suffered unduly and maybe disproportionately a chance to be on the economic side of this new emerging legal environment. And so, we have what we have now. Fast forward to this year where, 2020, the bell rings, recreation is here, but it grandfathered the existing medical players. And so it spoke to a potential of inclusion, but as we know here in Illinois, groups like Green Engine Grow, that is a social equity craft applicant and has put together a diverse team. Well, there was those who came before us that applied for the dispensaries. They're still here almost 10 months into the year of this tremendous year where Illinois has racked up amazing multi-million-dollar sales each month, breaking the previous month's record of recreational sales because of all this pent-up demand. Those social equity applicants are still on the outside looking in and still frustrated, but desirous of wanting to have a way of participating, again, as you said, in this legal activity. So what do you think distinguishes Illinois right now? It did it by legislation, but what do we have to do to fulfill the vision of real social equity in terms of inclusive opportunities for those communities that so desperately need an economic opportunity?
Bruce, that's a great question. And in answering it, I'm going to tell you by starting that it takes me back to Seattle in 2013 to the very first conference I ever attended in marijuana. When I'm first learning about the industry, I didn't know who MJ Business Daily was. But in addition to telling us, real messages that resonate from that initial meeting that I still carry with me today as my gospel in this industry. One of them was they spent at least one, maybe two presentation sessions over 2 days focusing on this issue of who are the people upon which marijuana industry was originally built upon, and what has happened to those people, and look at the ones who are in jail, and look at the people who are now trying to step in. And we always must remember, as stewards of this industry, where this industry came from. And they were preaching social equity. They may not have been calling it social equity, but they were preaching inclusion from day one.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. And to me, living in this day and age, we hear about social issues all the time, mostly for the positive and mostly in a way I think that's moving our country forward, and we really see it. Sometimes, unfortunately, we see the stories that go along with it, and I think a lot of that might depend on industry. Law enforcement, for instance, has not always been the most friendly place of employment for everybody that it could be. I think that that's kind of been an issue. So, if somebody were to sit down and tell me that from day one, social equity had always been a hallmark of law enforcement, I might be a little bit skeptical. If somebody tells me that from day one, marijuana has always been about social equity, to me, that fits naturally. That's what, not that marijuana itself is a social issue like that, but as a society, we've made it a social issue to some degree. Pro-marijuana, anti-marijuana. And I think that it's important to always remember from our perspective that if we're going to be pro-marijuana, it's not just about making money. Yes, we're all in this to make money, including me. I get that. But this industry has to have, a soul, if you will, something more to it than that breathes life into it. And I believe the whole history of cannabis, the United States is late to the game. If you look at world history.
Absolutely. And again, this is part, our team, which is a diverse team. We have the lead, started by a woman, myself. We're the two, partners in this effort. Then we've surrounded ourselves with other immensely talented people with long business backgrounds. So my partner, Wendy Esger, she's got marketing and a business and an innovation and a startup background. I've got a background in technology and marketing and strategic business development. So we've got others at the table with accounting and real estate experience. And so we put together an amazing team. And it's been a phenomenal experience in terms of the coming together of people of integrity who want to make a contribution. And we've made a choice to locate our business on the south side of Chicago in a impacted area. We're right around the corner from Olive Harvey College and Chicago State University, two of the colleges that want to have academic programs that help create a pipeline of talent into this community. We want to hire locally. We've got the good support of the aldermanic leaders in our particular area who believe that this can be a business opportunity and a job opportunity, so that, again, these are the communities that have been ravaged by disinvestment and underinvestment and lack of job opportunities. Some of the companies that have invested in the neighborhood, the retailers, the big box, these kinds of guys, all of those are low wage, many times part-time, no benefit types. They're not really career opportunities. But when you talk about this industry, you talk about the possibility of all of the skills it takes to be involved. We reached out to folks out of California to find the best that could come to Chicago and help us develop, because you're growing something. This is STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. This is agriculture, aquaponics. This is, HVAC, advanced lighting. And so this is a wonderful technical activity that's really advancing indoor agriculture in ways that this industry has never seen. But yet and still, here we are in October. By this time, we thought as a craft applicant, we may have heard our chances, but now because of the delay. So Larry, what do you make of this chicanery in Illinois with the delay of dispensaries? Do you think that this was inevitable and that there was going to be these kinds of problems, and it's kind of par for the course? And what would be your message to teams like ours, to Wendy and myself, and say, hang in there, don't worry about it. How should we face this extended time when we're still hoping and got fingers and toes crossed that we'll get a chance to be at the table in this industry?
All great points, Bruce. And you cover a lot of topics there that I think are really very important. But at the end of the day, they all come together into this question that you're asking me. What's happening in Illinois right now is unfortunate. To say that it's inevitable, I suppose, is certainly consistent with the punchline of most joke, where Illinois winds up on the butt end of it. Well, it is Illinois after all, so why should we be surprised, kind of thing. But it is disappointing because it was all avoidable, with just a little bit of time taken on the front end that they apparently weren't willing to give us in terms of the regular type of rulemaking, where I think a lot of these issues would have really come to play. And I think that there's probably a lot of issues why we're tied up here, but I think that one of probably the main issues is that, given what's happening in our society right now and the strong messaging we're seeing from all around the country talking about rights of all people, and particularly the Black Lives Movement and other people who have been historically suppressed by society and not given all of the opportunities. The hallmark of this program was supposed to be about showcasing how Illinois was really giving back to groups of people who had been historically and systemically marginalized. And that's the way that the message was sold. Unfortunately, that was not the right message. If you go to your average person on the street and say to them, hey, have you heard of the social equity program for Illinois marijuana? Yeah. What do you think? What do you think the qualifications are for that program? I'm willing to bet that 95% of the people will tell you, well, probably race, probably how much money they have, maybe where they live. So, we know that only one out of the three of those counts, and that's where you live. Social equity has nothing to do with race. Social equity has nothing to do with money. And we know this because one of the ways you can qualify for social equity is if you are a quote unquote victim of the war on drugs. Victim of the war on drugs, meaning that you were arrested for one of the marijuana laws for which you would now be eligible for expungement. So it was in that classification. And the joke was, oh, your mom always yelled at you about it for years, and now it could be your golden ticket to get a marijuana license. However, what people didn't stop and consider is that a 19-year-old from an affluent North Shore suburb who was arrested for marijuana is now as much of a qualified social equity candidate as a person of color on the South Side who doesn't have a lot of money and maybe actually served time in jail himself or herself for selling marijuana. And that doesn't really become apparent until we sit down and we look at the results and we say, oh, well, these are all big groups. You know, these aren't predominantly owned or run by people of color. Now, it may be possible that, you know, through the machinations of their lawyers and the way that they approached the rules, that they were able to legitimately claim social equity. There was a number of different ways that you could do it. But that's a hard message to bring back to a public that has been sensitized to the fact that we're going to try to really make this a representative program in terms of who we're going to let in the door. So yes, inevitably, it's unfortunate. I had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but it did. What's my message to groups? My message to groups is, this is not your fault. You've had nothing to do with this. You need to play by the rules the way you have up to this point, and merely because the state is kind of changing the target a little bit, or not going in the direction that we thought it would go, and should not be taken. Everybody's going to be disillusioned if they don't get a license. I understand. But what I tell my clients is, even if you don't get a license, the contribution you have made to the industry by filing an application and by going through this process and by bringing the ideas in your application to the table, to somebody's eyes, and showing the support. Imagine what other industry, Bruce, like you were saying, how well it's doing. What other industry out there would people be willing to come out of pocket $150,000 or more for the chance, for the possibility that they might be given the opportunity to enter, right? This isn't like going to McDonald's where if you pay the franchise fee, they hand you a key and you start business.
Yes.
Here you're paying the equivalent of a franchise fee and then waiting for the state to tell you whether you get a chance or whether you go home, but they keep your money.
Well,
right?
That's exactly the side of the fence that we're on. And that's exactly why we're doing this conversation today, is that we wanted to get our own story out, that we have put together what we believe is a stellar team. I have, for the last several years, been involved with working with a variety of small businesses, coaching, mentoring, delivering workshops and education across a broad range of industries. The arduous process of applying for this craft license, where you have to have a business plan, you have to have a financial plan, you have to have a source and use of funds document. I wish I could get my startups in other areas to go through this. And so this is a very arduous and challenging process. And I'm just delighted to have gone through it and to have such support that I've been able to receive from my co-founder and partners that, you know, I couldn't have ever, even with however much I think I know about strategic business planning and venture capital and angel funding and all the things I've been around in the tech world, this was still an arduous challenge. But it's been empowering, but also highly, as you could imagine, frustrating. But again, this is why we're having this conversation, is because we want to connect with others that are aspirants like ourselves. Hopefully, if somebody hears this conversation today and they happen to have been an applicant, I'd like them to reach out to us. We've got a Facebook page, Green Engine Grow. We've got an Instagram page, Green Engine Grow. We've got a website. So anybody hearing this conversation today, I would certainly love to connect with them if you're an applicant or you're in the industry in any kind of way. And we also believe that, and Larry, since you do have traveled across this network, and you're really one of the people that people in Nevada know you and people in Massachusetts know you, what are the outsiders saying about Illinois? How does Illinois appear outside of Illinois to folks? And what are their thoughts about seeing this industry with these amazing numbers month after month of these huge sales? What are their thoughts about this activity in Illinois and their desire to maybe get a foot in the door here, maybe through an organization like ours or some others?
Okay, before I answer that question, I'm gonna follow up just for a second on what you were just talking about. And I hope you'll forgive me, and I hope everybody else will, but I'm in a unique position in terms of knowing your group, Bruce. And I'm gonna take a minute and I'm gonna brag on you guys. because I work with a number of groups and I talk to a number of other attorneys who represent a large number of groups. And I think it's probably fair to say of all the groups that I've been associated with, there are very few, if any, which have the actual social equity bona fides that Green Engine brings to the table. You're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk. You've come in, you've been given a social equity position, you've been given a fair ownership position. Nobody's trying to negotiate with you to tell you that they want to take it away 10 minutes after the license is granted. You know, all positive. You're incorporated into a leadership role, a very active role. Your input is valued and becomes the basis of what this group does. I think that that's wonderful to see. But more than that, a group of owners who do come from the north side of the city have made it their business to invest in the south side of the city. They're going to locate their business in the south side of the city. They're going to hire their workforce from the people in the neighborhoods around them. This is the type of social equity that, in my opinion, was envisioned by the lawmakers, or at least the groups to whom the lawmakers spoke when they said, yes, we buy into this. And I'm thrilled to see that there's a group that is actually committed to these values, as yours is, that's out there. And I would echo your sentiment from a minute ago, that to the extent that there are other similarly situated groups that are really living the value of social equity and not just putting it on an application to make themselves look good, we would love to be able to talk to them. I know your group would be, it could be a wonderful type of synergy in terms of giving you all a very loud, powerful voice, which, you know, I don't like to speculate, but if we have scoring snafus on the craft grow side, like we did on the dispensary side, having a loud voice could be important. To get to the answer to your other question about Illinois, here's the funny thing. Forever, nobody wanted anything to do with Illinois. I'd go to the conferences. Hi, I'm Larry Mishkin. I'm from Illinois. Illinois can't, the medical people are all losing money. We're not interested. Call us someday when we get to, you know, make a lot of money. Now that we're adult use, my phone doesn't stop ringing because people around the country recognize that Illinois is the second most populous state after California to have an adult use program. Wow. It's the only one located in the Midwest. Really, Michigan is kind of, Illinois is in the heart of the Midwest, and it's surrounded by states, none of whom have adult use, making cross-border sales a very huge possibility. Yes, we're having our issues here, but the truth of the matter is I think those issues are really only a problem focused on by the applicants themselves because it's affecting them. My position is I'll take an adult use program with a million problems over no adult use program any day of the week. Because for the majority of the people in this state, the beauty of it is we can now walk a couple of blocks or get in our car and drive a couple of miles, and we can be at a facility where we can legally buy marijuana. And to me, that's just tremendous. And every state that's come online has had its share of problems. So I don't think Illinois is that far off from others. But I think because of the very numbers you mentioned and how each month we continue to outsell the month before with limited supply because the craft growers haven't come online yet, in the middle of a pandemic when people are reluctant to come out of their homes. And yet each month, we don't just beat the previous month, we blow past it. And by the time the craft growers come online and the new dispensaries come online, the amount of tax money that we'll be generating for this state will be so significantly more than what we have right now that should really be the motivation to everybody to really get this going.
Well, certainly one of the bright spots, as many of us try to find how to make lemonade out of lemons, is that there was a small group of those early legislators that bore the brunt of putting this law into place. And we're so thankful that they were some of the brightest and most talented legislators that chose this path. Our hats off to them for the contributions they made for getting this law on the books. But now the ball is in our court, and we must advocate for that which we want to see. And so, again, the reason we're doing this Green Engine show and Green Engine Network is a chance to, again, be a voice in the wilderness to try to say that there's some folks that really want to do social equity right. We really want to do the business right. We want to bring a high value, ultra premium quality market to the selection of connoisseurs and people that just want to check it out in this state, so that Illinois will not just be known for having an industry, but having an industry where high quality, high reputation, high value products exist. It's not just, hey, take it or leave it, but some things where people go into a place and find just an amazing selection of very unique and quality products. And we believe that's what craft brings to the table, is the chance for, we can all, if we're old enough, think back to when there maybe were only 5 or 6 beers that were offered, and you go into a place today and all of those selections really makes it worthwhile to have that craft exposure. We think that same thing can be true in this industry. So, Larry, I really, again, appreciate hearing your story about how you've been in this industry, because lawyers are, is a business as well as a practice, and you have to make a decision. You made a decision to commit to this industry and learn it and kind of get your arms around it and understand it. The compliance aspects of being in this industry is no joke, and you've been very stern with us in terms of letting us know that you have to pay much more attention to this industry, not only in attempt to get into it, but to stay into it, because compliance is a real world thing that has to be adhered to, and there's certain systems and practices that are non-negotiable when dealing with the kind of regulatory environment that we have in Illinois. So, Larry, as we close our conversation for today, and hopefully this will be the first of many we will have either in this format or others, again, your encouragement or advice to applicants like ourselves, like Green Engine Grow, that is going after a cultivation license, what would be some of the steps you would recommend that we continue to take to keep our chin up, to keep our head up, to be opportunistic in our vision, and connect with supporters of both capital and industry experience and other experiences? Because again, once we get that license, we still got to do all the things that you have to do to get going. So you've got to raise money, you've got to build out your facility, you've got to hire and get the right folks on board. So there's still a long way to go.
Remain positive. Understand that even if you do not get a license in this round, this is the first round of many. 20 years from now, when you're a wildly successful cultivator, nobody's going to remember if you got your license in the first round or the second round. A strong first round application will position you very well for the second round. And people have to understand there's only so many licenses to go around. Not everybody can get one, but there will be future opportunities. And then you'll have the benefit of coming into an industry where the kinks and the problems have already been worked out of the system, we hope. So we're a long way from shutting the door on people and telling them just to go home. There's a lot of opportunity to come for a number of years.
Well, Larry, I want to thank you for taking the time today. I know this is an interesting time. I know your phone is probably ringing off the hook. So we're going to continue to lean on you for your wisdom and insight and understanding for our group. Again, I want to thank my partner, Wendy Esger. She and I, talk literally, if not every day, 2 times a day on so many topics. And we're still trying to remain positive and hopeful. We do want our story told, that some people are taking social equity very seriously and taking business very seriously, because again, at the end of the day, as you mentioned, nobody's going to know when you got your license, but it also, the people want to know, have you produced a standout product? And that is only going to be because of the talented folks that we've put together. We've got some folks out of the Emerald Triangle in California that have been growing and knowing about this for a little while, that's helping us on the cultivation side. We want to send our shout out to the Fat Bowl guys and all of the help that they've been. And then again, it's a complex team that you have to pull together, from construction to build out to design of the facility and management of the facility, and our other team members that's helping us. We just got such a great team. So over the course of the next few weeks, we hope to have more of these, and you'll be able to meet more of the folks behind the scenes with Green Engine Grow. But again, I really enjoy the time that you've taken with us today. and we'll be seeing you out there on the road. Probably you may see us down there in Springfield trying to make sure that the folks know who we are. That social equity and craft is a real opportunity. So again, enjoyed the conversation today. Thank you so much. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this has been another edition of the Green Engine Report for the Green Engine Network. Glad to have this opportunity to share our story. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bruce.